in our conversation on the past questions, and let's look at question 1 that tested multiple ethical and professional issues in the May 2021 diet. All right, so the question reads, Blackmat PLC is one of your listed audit clients, which offers property management, property financing, and mortgage services to its clients. During the audit of the company, the following matters came to your attention. Number 1, Grace Sadiku, one of the audit team members, has previously agreed to take out a mortgage facility with a duration of 10 years using the facility of Blackmat PLC to finance her first residential property. In the area where the property is located, the first residential property gets full tax waiver on the entire installments paid within the first 5 years, which is usually a significant tax incentive. The mortgage facility will be secured by the property, and it has been defined as the best offer available in the market. And number 2, also during the period, the HR manager of Blackmat PLC resigned, and the company has reached out to your firm to provide a staff on secondment till a substantive HR manager is appointed. Number 3, the management of Blackmat has also informed your audit firm that the company maintains only 2 bank accounts, and there will be no need to secularize the banks, as the auditors can rely on the balances as generated from the bank's portal as at the end of the year. And number 4, the audit committee has asked your firm to work with the internal audit team to design internal controls over the part of the accounting system which deals with revenue, and also evaluate the operating effectiveness of the internal controls. Prepare a memo to your manager commenting on the professional and ethical issues arising from the audit of Blackmat PLC, and also suggest to him or her on how to manage the identified issues. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again. You see that this classic scenario-based question designed to test our ability to identify ethical threats and propose appropriate safeguards and actions in, I think this question is a real-world audit context. The question requires us to adopt the role of an audit senior. So writing a memo to your manager, which means your answer needs to be structured professionally. Yeah, it must be structured professionally. So going through the examiner's report, indicated below average performance, highlighting common pitfalls like lack of knowledge of professional conduct rules, difficulty in identifying specific threats from scenarios, and poor report draft skills or report drafting skills. This reinforces the need for precise identification of threats and clear implementable recommendations presented in a memo format. Take note, in a memo format. All right, so let's look at the answers. Okay. So the question says, prepare a memo to your manager. So take note of the prompts. Prepare a memo to your manager. So what do we write? What do we write for such or for each scenario? Excuse me. Our response needs to be structured as a memo, actually, to our manager, as explicitly required. This means include from, to, and a title line within the memo. So we need to address each scenario, Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4, separately. So for each scenario, we should, number 1, identify the professional or ethical issue. So clearly state the specific ethical threats. So, for example, the self-interest, self-review, advocacy, familiarity, intimidation, or professional issues in the case. Lack of sufficient appropriate audit evidence, management responsibility, Then explain how the issue arises. So briefly describe why and how this particular situation creates the identified the identified threat or the issue. Then the third thing is to recommend actions or safeguards. So propose specific implementable and practical steps that should be taken to mitigate the threat or address the issue. Very important. Okay, so let's look at line by line, practically how to address the matter. So from the solution, you will see that the Grace Sadiku's mortgage facility issue, Grace Sadiku's mortgage facility issue. The first issue is the primary threat is a self-interest threat, because Grace Sadiku has financial interest in that or in an audit client. While the best offer and tax waiver might seem harmless, actually, the loan itself, you see that it creates a dependency. The tax waiver is a red herring that is focused on the loan terms. So the best offer, then tax waiver, I think is the loan itself. It creates dependency on the client, which is not proper. There's a self-interest threat. So in writing, explain that a loan from an audit client to an audit team member, especially if not under normal commercial terms, creates a self-interest threat, actually. Yeah, so the terms are specific. So the recommended actions is, you see the solution provides a clear recommended action or safeguard. The recommended action based on the solution is that, or I think the solution offers good safeguards. Confirm the loan is indeed on normal market terms condition is a safeguard. So actions around that, confirming the loan is actually indeed on normal market terms and conditions. If not on normal terms, Grace Sadiku should be withdrawn from the audit team, or decline the loan, or seek financing elsewhere. And if she's a junior staff without significant influence, a senior review or independent or peer review of her work might be a safeguard. But I think withdrawal is stronger, is the strongest safeguard. Very important. So take note of these recommended courses of action. So it's a 15-mark question. Then for the part B, secondment of the HR manager, the part B, secondment of the HR manager. The issue is that this immediately triggers a self-review threat, and more significantly, a management responsibility threat, if there's any threat like that. An audit firm cannot perform management functions for an audit client. So the HR manager's role is a key management function. So how do we write this, or in writing? Clearly state that providing a staff on secondment for an HR manager role means the audit firm will be taking on management responsibilities and will subsequently audit its own work. So that's a self-review threat. So what are the recommendations you could provide? The firm must decline this request. And you see that the solution provides or emphasizes that assuming management responsibility creates a threat so significant that no safeguard can reduce it to an acceptable level. Exactly. So take note of that. Then the next one is balance confirmation. Balance confirmation. And the issue with this balance confirmation is that the client's assertion that bank confirmations are not needed and auditors can rely on portal balances points to a lack of appropriate sufficient audit evidence. Take note of that word or that phrase, lack of appropriate sufficient or sufficient appropriate evidence. That's the issue. This isn't primarily, you see, it's not an ethical threat in the traditional sense, but a professional competence and due care issue has arisen based on this. So there might be a subtle intimidation threat if the client is trying to dictate audit procedures. So take note of that. So the solution also mentions familiarity, but it's more about evidence, obtaining evidence. This is very important. So in writing, explain that reliance solely on client-generated portal balances is insufficient audit evidence. Bank confirmations are a standard and often required audit procedure to verify cash balance independently. Very important audit procedure. Very, very important. Core big audit firms don't play with this at all. They don't. They don't play with this. Yeah, AA, yes, I've not heard you today. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
You're
I
welcome.
just want to get this clarity in
Yeah.
terms of the secularization.
Yes,
You
please.
know, we are in an environment that everything is online, and
Yes.
we can even give the auditors access to check the account by themselves. So,
Yeah.
if we do something like that, is this still an issue uh, in terms of a threat? Is this still a threat?
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. Very good question. And I think also the management or the question asks that explicitly. So one of the reasons why they take um, bank confirmations must be responded by the auditor, not just from the portal, is that he has appropriate, sufficient evidence. Of course, he's independently assessing the portal, he's been given access. Good, is good. But the banks need to write that as at this date, this is what we confirmed on the portal, and the bank will sign. So that evidence shows. So if something goes wrong and FRCN comes after you as an auditor and is asking, okay, balance confirmation, you now go to the portal. That's not appropriate, sufficient evidence. So that response with the signed signature of the bank to you is the sufficient, appropriate evidence. Nobody is saying the portal is wrong, but as at that cutoff, the cash balance as at this, the bank will write back and is independent. If management will not know. So that evidence is filed as an audit working paper for the auditors. The portal of the bank a is not an is not an audit working paper. That the platform belongs to the bank. Of course, you've confirmed it, but where is the documented, either digital or hard copy? So it's very important they obtain that confirmation, and most firms don't play with that. The serious big four I've worked with, no, they don't play with that. It must be documented. In fact, when you check their dashboard to see issues resolved, you see all those evidence audit keepers. They take it from the bank and keep it as their audit evidence. So in answering your question succinctly, yes, it must be provided in writing as sufficient, appropriate audit evidence. I hope you're okay with that submission.
All right, all right. Okay with it. Though, I'm just trying to, just like I said,
Yes.
uh, banks have a way of, you can generate statements, you can generate things that it will show the signature of banks, even on that online platform. But
Okay.
just like you have said, I will agree with you. But
Yeah.
these are things that I'm also seeing, and I'm just trying to see how are sufficient are they as evidence in
Yeah.
audit work.
Yeah. Thank you very much. If they are signatures, then I think it will suffice. If you are signatures that are downloadable either in PDF format and the bank signature is there, the auditor can have that. I think it's okay. The main thing is somebody is ratifying, signing off that whether e-signature or whatever generated, there's a signature as the auditor, because you are the auditor, have something, and it's a safeguard against maybe any questions in future. Whenever you are doing an audit, always have it at the back of your mind that if somebody comes to check, that's one challenge with audit, even internal audits. If somebody does the same work, will the person arrive at the same result professionally? So that's why sufficient, appropriate. So thank you for bringing that to the fore. If there are signatures that are downloadable from the bank, I mean, I think that's sufficient in my opinion. So thank you for. I've not seen that anyway. The meticulous big four I've worked with, most of them, they must get digital signed copy. In fact, to get to a point where we may have to be calling the bank. You people should answer these auditors now. They are not signing our financial statements. I don't to see sometimes we have to be involved because they will tell you the bank has not responded, so they will not provide their opinion. Yeah, so that's sufficient, appropriate evidence. And thank you for bringing clarity also to that point. Okay, so speaking to how to write and talking about familiarity, and we need to explain also that reliance solely on client-generated portal balances, like I said, is insufficient. But with AA submission, if there are signatures digital from the bank. I think that will suffice because the bank confirmations are a standard and they are often required. They are a required audit procedure to verify cash balances, and it should be independent. Those verifications should be independent verification. So in this third aspect, or number 3, bank balance confirmation, the recommended action is that the audit team insist on performing bank confirmations or alternative procedures if confirmations are not possible. So if management refuses or no alternative evidence can be obtained, I think this could lead to qualification of the report or to a scope limitation, and it could potentially result in a modified audit opinion. That is, you can qualify the opinion or a disclaimer of opinion. Any of those options will suffice if this is not provided or you're not allowed to perform this audit procedure. Is that serious? So let's take note of that in our answers. All right, so let's look at the fourth part. Speaking to internal audits. Yeah, so the fourth part speaks to internal audit and internal control design and evaluation. So the issue is another clear case of self-review threat and management responsibility threat. Designing and evaluating internal controls are management's responsibility. So if the external auditor does this, they will be auditing their own work in subsequent financial statements audit. So in writing, explain that designing controls is a management function and evaluating their effectiveness leads to a self-review threat. And what are the recommended actions? The audit firm must decline this request in number 4. The solution correctly states that management's responsibility for internal controls creates an insurmountable threat to independence. Very clear in the solution. So let's take note of that. So generally, in writing or addressing such questions, adopt the memo format. Very important. Most candidates are marked down, not just because they didn't write what they are supposed to write, but just flaunting that instruction of memo format somebody could mark you 0. So take note of that memo format. They are the nitty-gritties. So start with the from, to, and title. I think UK give us a standard office format, but whatever it is, just make sure that memo, to, from, title is there. It shows you are following the instructions and you understand professional communication. Very important. So categorize and explain the threats. Don't just list ethical threats. So for each scenario, like we've discussed, clearly state the specific threat. So for example, self-interest threat arises because you continue your session, your thoughts or your writing. Self-interest threat arises because such phrases make a lot of sense. And then briefly explain how that threat manifests in the given circumstances. Very important. Then propose concrete actions and safeguards, implementable ones. So your recommendation should be practical and specific. Instead of saying deal with it, suggest actions like withdraw the team member, decline the service, insist on confirmations. Don't just say deal with it or find a solution. No, that's not practical. Propose concrete actions or safeguards. Then another strategy is connect to professional standards if possible. So where relevant, implicitly and explicitly referencing the ICAN code, like KU said. He spoke about standards. So these principles, like ICAN code of conduct, IASB code as the solution provides, they are principles, but they may be the standards relating to this topic. So if you explicitly reference this, it demonstrates a deeper understanding of the regulatory framework or the codes of professional conduct. Yes, I think I saw his hand. Hey, please go ahead. Interject freely. I think your hand flashed.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So what I'm trying to look at now is this: in all of these scenarios, is it advisable for us to look at the eight boxes of case study exam and see how we can apply that in this kind of a scenario?
No. Why am I saying no is that you're going to complicate your answers. Now, the case study is broader and the discursive aspect is much more elaborate than the AAA paper. So it may have the same format, but please be concise. So in looking at the solution, that 8 boxes, the general data and information, professional tools, it may not relate graphically. So don't complicate the answers. So I think following this roadmap based on the Pathfinder will help you be much more briefer. If you make your solution or write-up a bit elaborate, you may bore the examiner. One of the good things, or one of the advice I give to candidates is try to impress the examiner based on what you've seen the Pathfinder write. Don't write too much and too little. So 8 boxes format may resonate, but it will create a kind of longer script to write. And I must tell you that markers don't want to waste time on a script. Once they see you've done the nitty-gritties, they may not even read it between the lines. They just give you your marks. That's one truth about marking. I mark too. I mark mock exams. Sincerely, I don't read in between the lines. Once I see you've done the right thing, 1 or 2 thoughts, man, I just mark the person. So I think 8 boxes will give you a broader and wider scope of writing. So I'll suggest or I'll recommend you don't follow that format. Leave it for case study alone. I know you're writing case study. So I think follow this Pathfinder format. All right, you're welcome. Thank you for bringing that to the fore. It's a good one. Okay, so like I said, your proposed recommendations should be practical and specific, actually. And that's what I think prompted AA's question, which was good. But in this area, there are some questions that may not ask you for recommendations, but where they ask you for actions, safeguards, please provide them graphically. So like Kay, you said, he asked on linking professional standards. So in this professional code of conduct, chapter 3, we need to state the ICAN code of professional conduct linked to IASBA code of ethics. So those are our standards as the solution provides. It shows it demonstrates a deeper understanding of this framework. So understand all the parts. Ensure you cover the 4 scenarios, Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4 adequately. Allocate your time. Don't forget, time management is key. And detail your time and detail based on the total marks for the sessions. Then please provide clarity and conciseness. Write clearly, avoid jargon, where simple or simpler terms suffice. Simpler terms will suffice. Use bullet points for readability as shown in the solution. Very important. Then looking at the marking key, very important. So as we are reading, it's good we adopt this strategy. An HCCA lecturer said, if you read for 1 hour, maybe a study text, practice for 2 hours. Especially if you are taking the paper again, it's just to reinforce and understand the. Then if you're taking the paper for the first time, you can just 2 hours reading, 2 hours past question. But if you're taking the paper or you're attempting, read 1 hour, practice questions, 2 hours. I'm glad we're using this approach. After a chapter, we look at past questions. So practice. It will get you solidified with the subject. So looking at the marking key, the memo format is 2 marks if you follow the memo format, but that 2 marks could be a prerequisite. If you don't do the memo, man, the guy can mark you down. You are impatient. He has flaunted the first instruction. What other? I beg, can just say 0. So please, that memo format is 2 marks, but then could be a prerequisite to the others. 0.5 marks each for from, to, and 1 mark for the title. Please don't miss these easy marks. Just that. From is 0.5, to 0.5, then 1 mark, 2 marks. Very easy to write to, from, and title. Please don't miss that. Then for the mortgage facility is 4 marks. This indicates we need about 4 solid points for this scenario, the mortgage facility. So the solution provides self-interest risk or interest threat, establishing normal market conditions, acceptable safeguards, withdrawal non-acceptance, seeking elsewhere options, and engagement partner review for junior staff. So that solution is clear. Then for the secondment of staff, 3 marks. We need to aim for 3 marks. We need to aim for 3 points, 3 key points. The solution covers self-review threat, ISBA code on public interest entities, and establishing if the HR role is significant. leading to declining if it is. So the core is recognizing the management's responsibility. Exactly. And the balance confirmation, 3 marks. 3 marks are needed. The solution gives risk of not obtaining appropriate, sufficient evidence, exposure to opinion risk, then familiarity threat, though evidence risk is actually stronger, and also communicating with governance, those charged with governance, leading to a possible modification of opinion that could lead to qualification or disclaimer of opinion. Then the internal audit part is 3 marks. 3 points are required for these 3 marks. So the solution covers self-review threat, management responsibility threat, which is most critical point. External auditors should not assume management's responsibility, and also politely declining the request. So if you follow this breakdown, ensuring our memo covers all these required aspects, we earn our marks, maximum marks for each scenario. Very important. All right. First, it's actually a classic question. I think I like the question. It's classic. All right. So any question, contribution? Any question, contribution? As we run, I think we overflogged that question. We spent more than 30 minutes on it. All right. I believe we grasped the topic or the question very well. Okay, so let's look at question 5, May 2021. Judy Nigeria, the question reads, Judy Nigeria Limited is a company that manufactures bicycles. The company acquired M&M Tires Limited, a manufacturer of tires, in 2018 financial year. 6 months after the acquisition, M&M Tires declared for bankruptcy. The management of Judy Nigeria alleged that there have been financial impropriety by the previous management of M&M, and that 2017 financial statements of the company did not show a true and fair view of its financial performance. The management of Judy Nigeria Limited also alleged that the auditors of M&M had been negligent in carrying out the audit. The managing director has asked your audit firm to carry out a forensic audit to determine if the auditors were negligent in their duties. Required. Apply the fundamental ethical principles to forensic auditors' engagement. 5 marks. Okay, that's the C aspect that tests fundamental ethical principles. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, the question actually tests our ability to apply the core ethical principles of the accounting profession to a specialized field, forensic auditing. And I think this is the second question now that we've looked at on forensic auditing. Okay, so while these principles, integrity, objectivity, are fundamental to all our accounting work, the question requires us to demonstrate an understanding of how they apply specifically within the context of forensic engagement, like the last question, which often involve legal disputes, investigations, and the potential for a client to seek a particular outcome. Yeah, so looking at the examiner's report, performance was below average. I think it was due to a failure to connect the principles to the specific challenges of forensic work. Please take note of that. It said, apply the fundamental ethical principles to a forensic auditor engagement. So let's look at the answer and speak to the answer. So take note of it. Almost the same replica of the last question we looked at. You see that the question prompts us to apply the fundamental ethical principles to a forensic auditor's engagement. It means you should not just list the principles. You need to explain how each one is relevant in a forensic context. And for a 5-mark question, it translates to identifying and also explaining all 5 principles clearly. So for example, integrity. Explain that the forensic auditor must remain honest and straightforward, even when dealing with potential dishonest parties or a client who wants a specific result. Their duty is to truth, not the client's desired outcome. Very important. And for objectivity, is a crucial principle for forensic work. The forensic auditor must remain impartial and free from bias. Even though the client is paying for the service, the auditor must not allow a bias towards the client's interest to affect their findings. Very key. Principle is key to overcoming the advocacy threat inherent in litigation support engagement. Very, very important. So take note of it in the solution. Then for Professional competence and due care. Forensic auditing is a highly specialized field. You must state that a forensic auditor needs the specific skills, knowledge, and experience to undertake the engagement. This is not just basic or statutory audit. It requires understanding of legal matters, investigation techniques, and often specific industry expertise. Very key. And then for confidentiality, explain the standard rule of confidentiality and then highlight the key exception in forensic work. The duty of confidentiality, we've discussed it, can be overridden by legal requirements such as court order to provide evidence. So this is a critical distinction from a regular audit. Then for professional behavior, we need to emphasize that the auditor's conduct, especially when appearing as an expert witness in court, reflects on the entire accounting profession. So the forensic auditor must act with courtesy, professionalism, and respect for legal proceedings to maintain the reputation of their profession. Very, very key. So that is explicitly provided in the answer. So generally, we need to strategize to earn our marks seamlessly. So direct application, don't just define, you need to directly apply these principles to forensic audit work. So don't just define the principles, show you understand the nuances and the nitty-gritties of forensic work by giving a specific example of each principle. So for example, integrity in the face of dishonesty, objectivity despite the client's bias, confidentiality being overridden by law. So terms like that. Then you need to clearly structure your answer. We've always emphasized bullet points, headers for each principle. This makes it easy for your paper or script to be read and ensures you have addressed all the parts of the question. Use terminologies that are specific. Don't just write vague or sporadically. Specific terms, advocacy threat, impartial, unbiased, due care, witness, expert witness, those terms demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of the subject matter. And finally, time management, which as we are practicing, it's the only way we could achieve this practice. The question is what 5 marks? So a concise, well-structured answer is best. Spend about 1 minute per mark. So roughly 5 minutes on this question, or maybe 6 to 7 minutes if you must waste time. Very key. So looking at the marking key, okay. The marking key is very clear. So identification and explanation of each principle at 1 mark. This means you get 1 mark for each of the 5 principles. You need to both name the principle and provide a brief, relevant explanation to get the full mark. The solution does this effectively by linking each principle directly, if you look at the solution, to the context of a forensic audit engagement. The key takeaway actually is that you must address all 5 principles to score full marks on this question. All right. Pretty question. And, pretty straightforward, even though it has come out with the forensic link up. Okay, so any question? Any question? I think we have 2 more questions, and I want us to finish it in 15 minutes. Any question, any observation? All right, so let's run. Question 2B, May 2023. So the last diet we look at 2021. He did not test November 2021. He did not test May 2022, November 2022, then he jumped to May 2023. Okay, so he skipped some diets. Actually, we have the diet he skipped at the beginning of the content page. Okay, so I've shared the question. I'll share the answers once we are done. Let's see how to wrap up these 2 questions in 15 minutes. So let's run. Question 2B, May 2023. There's an indication of increasing application of technology in the business and commercial world. A lot of activities are now carried out on a real-time basis, and payment systems are gradually reducing the use of checks. Your new audit client is one of the companies that has recently enhanced their business settings with respect to receipts and payments. The previous auditor has little depth in information and communication technology, despite the growing trend. The client's management also thinks that its performance in the past has been inadequately reported due to the complicity of the key accounting staff and inadequacies of the previous auditor. The client is therefore considering its options in the circumstances required. Evaluate the ethical principles that will be relevant in the conduct of forensic investigation of this client and the considerations the accountant needs to bear in mind in such an engagement. Wow, 7 marks. Forensic again. Okay, forensic. All right. I think this question tests our ability to apply core ethical principles and professional considerations to forensic investigation again. I think it's a standard application question. This scenario highlights key issues like new client with past inadequacies and complicity, which are perfect indicators for a forensic audit. And I think the examiner said candidates performed poorly, likely because they failed to properly connect again the ethical principles to forensic context. I think the question is straightforward though, with a clear two-part structure: ethical principles and practical considerations. The question is clear: ethical principles and practical considerations. Take note of that. All right, so we need to answer, or our answer to be structured in 2 distinct sections to address both parts of the prompt. So for ethical principles, don't just list the 5 fundamental principles. You must evaluate them. Yeah, don't just list, evaluate them. It means you should briefly define each one and then explain its specific relevance in a forensic setting. So for example, for objectivity, explain that while the client is paying for the service, the accountant's loyalty is to the evidence and truth, not the client's desired outcome, like we said in the last question. It shows a deeper understanding. And I think the solution provides that very clearly. And for the considerations, this is the second part. It's a double-barrel question. The second part of the question, you need to list and explain briefly the unique considerations an accountant must bear in mind. And these are the practical realities of a forensic engagement, such as the duty to the court and the complex issue of legal privilege. So simply listing this will not will not get the marks or will not suffice. A brief explanation of each point is required to earn the marks. Very important to note in writing. So looking at the answers, you can see how it's stratified. Take note of the considerations also. So generally, read the prompt carefully, please. Note the action verb, evaluate, please. Read the prompt, evaluate. Note those action verbs, the first one, so that it will prompt us to act or to answer. And the 2 distinct parts of the question, you must address both ethical principles and specific considerations. Very important. Use specific terminology like we've said previously. Structure your answer. Connect theory to practice. Actually, your explanation for each ethical principle must directly link to the forensic context. So, for example, in the forensic work, the duty of confidentiality is overridden by legal requirements are statements you should make, and it shows you can apply your knowledge. So for the ethical principles, the marking guide gives us 1 mark or 1.5 marks for any 4 principles. It means you should aim to explain at least 4 of the 5 to secure the 7 marks that have been provided in the marking key. And below average, okay? Okay. Yeah. So I think the question is a follow-up of the other questions we just looked at. All right, so any question? I'm trying to run. Don't mind my speed. I want us to end this so that on Thursday we'll look at chapter 4. Any question? I think we are going to the last question for this chapter. Any question? Any contribution? Okay, so let's look at the last part, speaking to question 7A of that same May 2023. And it reads, at the annual general meeting of Aggressive Bank Limited for the year 2020, the shareholders complained about increasing cases of customer complaints about fraud. It was believed that if drastic actions are not taken to reduce this, it could lead to brand damage and reputational issues. In performing their oversight functions, the audit committee of the bank commissioned the internal audit unit to address issues of fraud and likely causes. From the internal audit report, the following issues were noted. Number one, due to poor information security system, some unscrupulous individuals hacked into customers' current and savings deposit account and made unauthorized transfers to their bank accounts. Number two, there were cases of forged checks with forged signatures, cards, and withdrawal slips which were used to withdraw money from bank accounts. These acts were perpetrated through collusion with staff of the bank. Number three, cases of opening and operating fictitious bank accounts where illegal transfers were made. The problem is compounded with incomplete KYC activities carried out by the bank's personnel. Number four, granting of loans to fictitious borrowers through fictitious accounts opened in the bank branches of the bank. Five, some junior staff making claims of overtime for hours not work. Six, suppression of cash checks that were supposed to reflect on customers' deposits and loan repayments. The cash through checks were diverted to the fictitious accounts in operation in the bank. And seven, cases of alteration of programs or application packages and gaining access to unauthorized domains or accounts to give credit to accounts for which the funds were not intended. The following we identify as likely causes: weak accounting and internal control system, negligence and poor supervision of subordinates, inadequate follow-up or disregard for KYC rule, poor information technology and database management, poor salaries and condition of service, failure to perform regular end-of-day call-over, non-implementation of sanctions on employees who fail to comply with SOPs, notwithstanding details of fraud and forgeries to regulators as required due to fear of negative publicity or image, lack of experience and inadequate training, and inadequate infrastructure in the bank as manifested in constant power failure, congested office space, and non-completion of expected daily tasks before closing. The audit committee, having gone through this internal audit report, decided to act swiftly by mandating the management to engage a forensic expert to report forensic report on this. Okay, the firm has been appointed to submit a report on this issue in the next 4 weeks. The A part, discuss the ethical principles you believe will be applicable in this situation. This is like repeating the question we just. All right. Is the question actually tests our ability to apply the core principles, same as the previous one, to forensic investigation in the banking sector. So the scenario, I think, details that long grid, man. Details numerous types of fraud, control weakness, providing a strong basis for the need for a forensic audit. And also the examiner, I think, said performance was poor again. And this is recurring. So we need to take note of this question and practice them intricately. So likely candidates failed to specifically connect the generic ethical principles to the unique challenges of forensic work. The question is a straightforward application of the 5 fundamental ethical principles. So in writing, we need to, the prompt says we should discuss. Prompt says discuss. So take note of the prompt. It asks us to discuss the ethical principles applicable to the situation. It means you should not just list them like the other ones. So for each of the fundamental principles, we must name the principle, briefly define it, explain its relevance or specific relevance to a forensic investigation in a bank. So here's how to structure your response. So if you look at the solution, you can structure our response in this manner. So for integrity, state that a forensic accountant must be straightforward and honest. Apply this by explaining that in a fraud investigation where dishonesty is a core issue, the accountant's integrity must be unwavering. Very important. Then for objectivity, it's crucial. This is crucial because objectivity is the key. Define objectivity as free from bias, of course. Apply this by explaining that despite being paid by the bank's audit committee, the forensic accountant must not be influenced to reach a predetermined conclusion. So their opinion or the forensic accountant's opinion must be based solely on evidence. regardless of whether it's favorable to the bank or not. So this addresses the inherent advocacy threat, as if the bank wants to use the forensic accountant as their tool. Very important. Then for professional competence and due care, explain that forensic accounting is a specialized field. So the accountant must possess the necessary skills and experience in areas like data analytics, fraud detection, and legal procedures. I saw some profile of some forensic accountants on that ICAN, and most of them went for BSc law. I noticed they were having law degree. I said, too, chartered accountants, lawyers. Wow. So just to understand legal proceedings, they still went to do 5 years law. Now, wow. All right. So I think that's talking about this professional competence when I was going through their profile. So they must also work diligently and carefully to gather and document evidence. Then for the confidentiality aspect, define the duty of confidentiality to the client. Apply this by noting the unique exception in forensic work. So the duty is overridden by legal requirements, like we've said previously, such as a court order to provide evidence. So this is a critical distinction from a normal audit. And finally, professional behavior. Explain that the accountant must act in a way that doesn't discredit the profession. This is particularly important when dealing with sensitive information or collaborating with law enforcement agencies or potentially appearing in court as an expert witness. So this is key in writing as provided, and just giving you some thoughts on how to navigate this question seamlessly. Then for general strategies, be specific. Don't just list the principles we've said over and over again. Provide a brief explanation of how each one applies to the given scenario. So for example, how objectivity is challenged by the client's desire for a specific outcome. So you need to address that. Then we said use professional terminology as usual so that the examiner can relate. Then manage your time, very important, and practice is essential. And structure your answers for clarity using bullet points, and please make it easy to mark. Make your response and your writing easy for the examiner to read and mark. It ensures just ensure you address all the parts of the question and make your script easy to mark, please. So looking at the marking key, almost like the same one, the last one, 1 mark for each point, and the solution has provided that. So when you list and explain, so the model answer actually, solution correctly identifies and discusses each of the 5 principles, which is why it's a model answer. So please, let's go through the report and ensure that we align properly as we read. Let's solve questions. So you can see from the content, there are some dates he didn't test. He didn't test November 2023, May 2024, November 2024, May 2025. There were no questions on rules of professional conduct, chapter 3. So take note of that. We don't know if that will come in November 2025. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, any question? Please don't mind me. I was speeding, rushing my thoughts just to ensure that we finish these past questions today. And let's jump into another chapter. We have not gone into the intricate areas, chapter 5, chapter 6, all those deadly areas he tests lately. I want us to hurry up and address those ones critically. All right. So we have 1 more minute to close. Any questions, observations, and contribute? Oh, yeah. I hope your hand has not been there for long. Sorry, I'm just seeing it now. Please go ahead, AA.
Thank you very much.
All right, all right. You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you for the lecture and for the explanations. So I just want to make it clear. For instance, now our audit firm has been appointed as more or less like a forensic investigator, and after the forensic works that we have done on a closed audit, like an external audit has been done, statutory audit has been done, we discovered so many misstatements and the likes. Does it mean that we need to restate the books of that company or what? In
Exactly.
terms of okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry to interject. Sorry, go ahead.
So basically, that's my question. Does it mean we need to restate the books of the company? Basically, that's my question.
Yes, in answering it succinctly, yes. So, where you said you made a statement on material misstatements. So, where those are materially misstated and the forensic investigation found out, then the books have to be restated. Very important. But then it's not the same firm that finished the audit that should also do the forensic audit. That would be uh, a threat. It's a threat. So, in practice, it's normally advised that a different firm, and most audit firms hardly carry out forensic audits. They are specialized areas. So hardly do audit firms even the big four hardly. I'm not sure where they have forensic departments. I'm not sure. I don't know, but it's advised that separate firms should do it. So where another firm comes after an external audit has been done and finds a lot of material issues, yes, in answering your questions, adjustments must be made. So there are post-audit reviews that will be carried out. Thank you for that question. It's actually so modified opinions and all that to be done, adjustments to recognize all those material entries that were as a result of fraud must be carried out. Yes, so in answering your question, sure, that has to be effected.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for bringing these fantastic questions to the fore. All right, so any other question, any contribution, any observation before we close? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we are done with chapter 3. So like I advised earlier, as we are reading, please, we'll go through this question. We're reading the study pack with these questions as we share, practice, and we look at the past question. Thank you, KU. I could see your hand. And I would say on Thursday, we'll move to chapter 4, doing professional liability. I wish you guys a lovely night rest and see you.